The Resident Evil franchise has been going strong for the past 30 years with many hits and very few misses. And though it's not the first of its kind, the series has paved the way for many developers in the horror genre, leading to games like Dead Space and Silent Hill. And though I like this franchise a lot, I've never actually played the classic lineup, back in the day when you weren't an overpowered protagonist mowing down zombies like it's Dead Rising. So with Requiem as the next big installment, I think it's a good time to get a first-hand experience of when it all started. Have the remakes prepare me for this, or have they spoiled me rotten? We're about to find out. So grab a snack, kick back, and relax as we dive into this Resident Evil retrospective. Now before we go any further, let it be known that I'm playing the remake version of this game, and that's because of the damn tank controls. Now I've played games with this control scheme before, no problem, but tank controls with a fixed camera is another beast entirely, and as you can see, I'm struggling just to move properly. Not a good start for someone who's going to be doing a lot of running around. So I immediately went to the modern controls because I just didn't have the patience for it. Of course, that wasn't the only reason I chose the remake. Aside from the graphical updates and better presentation, it also provides added lore to the RE universe, and story elements that weren't in the original. In the 1996 version, for example, you're never told who actually owns the mansion that's housing all these mysterious monstrosities. That alone makes the remake the more definitive version. With this version being over 10 years old, it's safe to assume I won't be spoiling anything for you. The game starts off with S.T.A.R.S Alpha Team, a group of elite operatives sent out to investigate the disappearance of Bravo Team, the other half of their unit. It was Bravo Team's mission to investigate the strange occurrences in the Arglay Mountains, where people were often disappearing and were never heard from again. At some point, Bravo Team suffered the same fate as they lost communication with HQ. But as Alpha Team commences their own search and rescue, they're attacked by cannibalistic dogs. No choice but to make a run for it, they quickly make their way to a nearby mansion in the woods. And though Chris was with them, he's missing by the time they actually enter the mansion. And just like outside, they're attacked inside by walking corpses, taking them down with ease. Naturally, they know something's wrong with this place and get straight to business. But for some reason, they decided to investigate the area separately. I didn't know I was playing Scooby-Doo. But that's pretty much the main plot. Breaking and entering someone's home while trying to evade the zombies like it's the police. As someone who got into the franchise because of the remakes, jumping into the classical era of Resident Evil definitely took a bit to get used to, as you saw earlier. Not relying on an over-the-shoulder angle made me realize just how much of an impact RE4 had on the franchise going forward. And that's something I really want to start with. So I'm not a fan of fixed camera angles, but it's hard not to appreciate them throughout the playthrough. As someone who went to school for film production, I couldn't help but notice just how cinematic it made the game feel, really setting the mood for the horror to come. Never knowing what's around the corner, it forced me to play slow and methodical, but the constantly changing angles did get a bit annoying at times, often making me feel disoriented, especially when dealing with tough enemies. But that was probably the intention behind it, to make you feel overwhelmed at a moment's notice. Another way they work against you though, is when you don't know you can keep moving in a particular direction, instead of simply running into the wall. At one point, I had to release a safety valve to save myself from drowning. But for the life of me, I couldn't find that damn valve until the last second. Of course, it didn't matter because I ended up dying anyway from taking too long. The visual indicators for most areas to explore are way too subtle at times to notice, after you've ran around them like 20 times. And you could argue that maybe I should pay more attention. I say make it a little more clear in a game with very mute color palettes. But honestly, I prefer the fixed camera angles over the save mechanics. As cool of a concept as it is, the save feature in the form of ink ribbons is the worst part of the game for me. What is used to effectively build tension and strategy in a horror game is the biggest issue. As someone who does a lot of save scumming, this was a literal nightmare for me because of how limited it was. There was nothing more precious to me than that ink ribbon and a typewriter. This took away some of the fun of exploration because it was so easy for everything to go downhill. At one point, I was making a lot of progress, finding keys to different doors, solving one puzzle after another as I strolled around the mansion as if I was doing a house tour. But the moment I saw one of the zombie dogs nearby, I immediately made a beeline for the nearest typewriter, scared to lose my progress. Unfortunately, I ran into another set of them on the way there, only to be taken out within seconds. An hour of my life wasted. The worst part being that I didn't remember how I progressed in the first place. My finger hovered over the delete button, realizing the abusive relationship I was getting myself into with this game. But alas, I brushed off the pain and pushed deeper into the mansion. And while I'm on the topic, the worst death for me was when I came across a giant boulder. Realizing I couldn't move it, I turned around to leave, only for the damn thing to start rolling my way and crushing me instantly. Luckily, I saved 20 minutes before that, but I dread the agony I would have felt had I not done so. 2 hours worth of progress deleted within seconds. I swear I would have punched the nearest baby. Alright, cool. Oh! Oh. Roll the angles. Alright, where do I go? Why is he so fast? Oh my gosh, this is my ass. No! Get off me! And speaking of dying to bullshit, the combat takes a back seat here. And I knew it wasn't the focus like it is later on in the franchise, but it was surprising how few enemy encounters there were, to the point that I had a full arsenal by the end of the game. But I did play the game on normal, so that's probably why. But I'm not complaining because the combat was pretty bland. The only strategy was to take a few steps back and shoot, repeating the same process until the enemy went down. And it was no different for the bosses, they just took longer. Again, the combat wasn't the main focus, so you can't really be too disappointed by it. But with this game, RE2, RE3, and Code Veronica all sharing the same formula, I get why Shinji Mikami wanted to shift gears when directing RE4. At that point, he felt things were getting stale, and he made a good judgment call. So it's a good thing RE1 is 90% puzzles. Now usually, I don't like dealing with them because I hate how dumb they make me feel. And there's nothing worse than looking up a video that shows you the most obvious, in-your-face solution that you spent 45 minutes trying to figure out. And I was dreading that problem when starting this game up. But aside from a couple of times, I didn't have to heavily rely on YouTube to solve most of these puzzles. They were for the most part pretty easy. You just have to remember where everything is because the map doesn't show you areas of interest or even items you might have passed by. It'll only mark the room as red if there's anything you missed. And a part of me really likes that because it doesn't hold your hand. A lot of modern games do that way too often, to the point that it feels like you're following directions instead of actually playing the game. Don't believe me? Play Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, and I swear you'll feel like you're just following a checklist instead of actually enjoying the game. The amount of yellow paint, tape, and markers I saw in RE2 and RE4 Remake felt insulting because the devs team felt as though I couldn't think for myself, or they thought I was blind to everything but the color yellow. If I want to pay to feel disrespected, I'll sit in front row at a comedy club and get roasted by the guy on stage. Thankfully, Resident Evil 1 came out during a time where games were a lot more niche and not cared to be overly accessible to everyone and their grandma. So when you solve these puzzles and everything starts to click, you do feel like you're uncovering classified information you were never meant to find, which adds to the already intense atmosphere among all the atrocities that's happening around you. With that being said, I do wish the map at least labeled the unsolved puzzles you came across, because while I do like solving them on my own, it's a special type of pain of when you finally find the solution to a puzzle you came across like an hour ago, and then spend another hour trying to find it again, all while trying not to die because you ran out of ink ribbons. And God forbid you run into the wrong enemy at the wrong time with the wrong setup, and now you just lost 2 hours worth of progress. Another thing I don't like is that the game doesn't tell you anything. I praise it for not holding my hand, but that doesn't mean I wanted to hide crucial information from me. At one point, I came across this guy named Richard who was poisoned by a giant snake. He asked me to find an antidote for him, and even though he told me where it was, he didn't tell me how to get there. So I'm looking around trying to find a route to that specific room while solving puzzles on the way. I finally found the room, but I couldn't grab the antidote for whatever reason, so then I run all the way back to Richard to tell him about it, only to find him slumped on the ground, dead. Apparently, I only had 5 minutes to get him the antidote, something neither Richard nor the game hinted at. So now I'm looking stupid because the first survivor I'm supposed to save dies 5 minutes after meeting him. If this is my first day on the job, it's time to retire. Also, some of these puzzles make absolutely no sense without a guide. For instance, I had to remove a jewel from a deer and a buffalo trophy while an eagle was tracking me, and for some reason you simply couldn't take the jewels out because something kept it launched in place. So I'm looking around the room for a tool to yank them out, but no luck. I tried shooting them. Again, no luck. I knew there was something off about the eagle, but for the life of me I couldn't figure it out because I couldn't interact with it. Come to find out, the eagle was preventing me from taking out the jewels using whatever special powers I was too dumb to comprehend. So I had to walk underneath this line of sight to keep it from tracking me, and only then was I able to grab the jewels. Nothing in that room hinted that I had to keep that damn eagle from staring at me. Hell, I spent some time trying to align the eagle with the deer and buffalo thinking that would do the trick. But no, not at all. I'm just there looking stupid, but maybe you solved it without help, but I was struggling here. And it sounds like I'm back and forth, but that's because I have mixed feelings about RE1. For every component I like about this game, it's quickly counteracted by something I don't like. And it has nothing to do with the era in which it came out. I've been playing video games all my life, long before they became as mainstream as they are today. So it's not like it feels outdated. It just felt like a few of the design choices worked against me throughout the playthrough. In fact, I think the game aged very well, especially when you take into account its art style, where it gives you a mesmerizing mixture of 2D and 3D elements. From RE1 to RE3, the dev team used pre-rendered backgrounds, which were basically static images, and because they had complete control of the camera angles, they were able to make flat images have a pseudo 3D look to them. I'm not trying to veer off too much, but I gotta say, this was brilliant, not just for the art style, but also for the hardware they were using at the time, the PlayStation 1. And because they were using pre-rendered backgrounds, the console was able to focus more of its energy on the 3D models, the characters, the enemies, the items, and so on. It reminds me of Silent Hill when its dev team used heavy fog to hide the PS1's limitations. But it fits so well in the game's context that it became one of the most iconic features in the franchise. Again, 2 birds, 1 stone. The ability to cut corners in such creative ways does feel like a lost art the more advanced the gaming industry becomes. And Resident Evil Remake really makes everything pop with its updated textures and overall presentation, giving it a very vintage look and making it feel timeless. This is something you lock away in a time capsule and share with your grandkids 60 years later so that they can experience what games were like back in the day. And that's the perfect way to describe my time with Resident Evil 1. It was an experience. Even though this isn't the game for me, I'm glad I had the chance to play it and take a journey into the franchise's humble beginnings. I don't see myself playing this game again, but I recommend this to anyone because, again, it aged like fine wine. Aside from maybe one area being cut, RE1 Remake is very faithful to the original, and is pretty much the best way to enjoy it. And that's pretty much my thoughts on everything. But I am curious, what are your thoughts on the game? Do you prefer the classic era of Resident Evil, or do you prefer the modern games? But now, it's time to focus on the present with Resident Evil Requiem, and I'm definitely going to make a video too on that, and I can't wait. Also, if there are any particular characters or games outside of Resident Evil you'd like me to cover, please let me know. I'm always open to new ideas. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and please, feel free to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the conversation. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.